Hi, everybody. It's Mike from Here, the Watchman. So excited this morning. I have one of my best friends, just a true brother in Christ, awesome radio show host, motivational speaker, evangelist. It's Mr. Josh Tolley. Josh, thank you for joining us today.
Mike, it is always great seeing you. And I'm so excited because we're only like 3 weeks out from Dallas, where I get to see you and your wonderful wife again soon. So I'm really stoked about that. And I'm so glad that so many people are joining us for it.
Oh, it's amazing. And we are so blessed to have you there and your lovely wife joining us. And, you know, it's an amazing event, folks. Amazing event. And it begins March 22nd through the 25th in Dallas, Texas at the Grapevine Hilton DFW Lakes Hotel. So you can go onto our website. You can get all the information there. It's here, thewatchman.com. If you want to attend in person, you best get busy. The conference is near capacity. I think we have less than 50 seats left. So get on board. Use the promo code Tolley20 and you'll get $20 off your ticket. You can also use that code for our live stream, so you don't have to miss anything. If you go to our website, click the live stream ticket, then what you'll get is live streaming of the conference hosted on VIMEO, which will be available for your viewing for 6 months. You get 20% off by using that code Tolley20. So Josh, let's jump into it. You did a wonderful interview, I believe it was yesterday, on a network television show where you talked a bit about the morals behind the kids today and what's going on. You know, I find it amazing that a college student today can figure out how to navigate and trade cryptocurrency, but they don't know how to change a tire on a car. What's going on out there?
That is so true. So you're right. I did a show on the Daily Ledger on OAN, and we were talking about that issue. You know, when we look at school shootings like the one in Florida, everybody loves to blame everything. You know, you have the left blaming guns. Now we have this idea that 4 deputies were outside with a hold order not to go inside. You know, whatever it happens to be, blaming the drugs, which all of these things are in some way, shape, or form applicable. The least of these would be the guns. Guns don't kill people. People kill people. But yeah, there is a mental health issue going on. There is this police issue going on. There is, you know, even if it was a stand down order, if I knew there were kids being shot, I'd go in anyway. So there is that. But the real root cause of that is much larger. See, whether we put vets on roofs or not, it's not going to fix the problem. Whether we fix the drug issue or not, it's not going to fix the problem. The problem is we have left morality. We have left God. We have left manliness. There are no longer men raising up these women. I was having a conversation today with Dr. Warren Farrell, who has a book coming out next month. It's called The Opioid Crisis. And he said, here's something that is rarely reported in news. With the exception of literally only 4 or 5 individuals, every recruit for ISIS that came out of Europe came from a fatherless home. Every one of them. Well, look at what we're seeing. The Vegas shooter, broken home. The Florida shooter, broken home. The theater shooter in Aurora, broken home. It's broken home, broken home, broken home. We don't want to deal with that. We'd rather blame guns or not enough armed teachers or, you know, the psychological drugs. But if you look at the root cause of this, why is it happening? Because we left morality. We had guns in the 60s. We have guns today. So the gun part's the same. We had AR-15s in the 80s. We had them today. Why did we not start seeing these mass shootings in schools until Columbine in 99 or 98? Why didn't we see it until then? Because that's when we had the consequence of one generation prior, the no-fault divorce. And once we get the no-fault divorce, you have broken homes everywhere. But it's a proven stat that kids who grow up without fathers in the home are many times likely to be prescribed psychiatric drugs to deal with things like depression, ADHD, ADD, bipolar. It's just the way it is. But they don't want to link those two things together, because then the responsibility falls on us, and heaven forbid that happens.
You know, you're deadly accurate there. You know, Josh, when you and I grew up, you're a little bit younger than I am, quite a bit younger than I am. But when we grew up, I mean, no one ever, I mean, there wasn't even a thought of a gun in school. I mean, if kids got in a fight or somebody got upset with one another, I mean, it just, no one would even think about that. But today, it's on everybody's mind. I saw that they're making a blanket that kids can carry in their backpack that's a Kevlar blanket, so they can duck and cover and wrap themselves up in Kevlar. Where are the morals? And that's the issue, I believe, what you're saying. And you know, now this is my personal opinion. You know, when we involved the state in marriages by having marriage licenses, I mean, that began the whole drama of divorce and the whole thing, because you have the state as a partner in your marriage. We need to get back to a husband and wife being a husband and wife in the eyes of God. Don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. That's why at my wedding, which you were at, thank you so much for attending. But at my wedding, we had what Christians used to call a ketubah. And we used to, well, that's Jewish. No, it isn't. We used to have them until the state got involved with marriage licenses. And what it was is it was that contract between the husband, the wife, and God. And 3 people were involved in that. Now it's the husband, the wife, and the state. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't trust politicians. Why would I ever want them involved in my marriage? And what's interesting about that push for state licensing was actually a push by pastors. Again, the weak, sniveling, non-male pastors of America were the ones that were pushing for that, because they didn't want a black woman marrying a white guy or vice versa. So they actually pushed for states to be the ones that declared a marriage valid or not. And as soon as you did that, it opened up Pandora's box for everything, which is exactly what the LGBTQIAXPA community used to get equal rights there. And it's exactly what the polygamous groups are now using to get rights there. So yeah, that opened Pandora's box. When we replaced God with government, that did it.
Yeah, I mean that, and we've done that. And now let's look at this generation. You know, we've often referred to them as the Snowflake Generation. What has happened to them? I mean, you know, when I grew up, if your bike broke, your dad said, "Wow, that's too bad. You're going to have to go out there and fix it." Now, he'd show you how to fix it once, and then after that, you fixed it yourself. The same thing with your car. When you got old enough to have a car, if you got a flat tire on the side of the road, you couldn't call AAA. You had to get out of your car, jack the car up, and change the tire. But today, when a kid's bicycle breaks, mom and dad run out and buy him a new bike. Or he doesn't have a bike at all because he just sits in the house all day with his smartphone or his video game console, whatever it is. Kids don't go outside and play anymore. They're like sequestered. What's going on with that, and what do we need to do?
Well, we stopped raising kids. That's the problem. See, we used to raise them in the way that they shall go and they shall not depart. It was written in a big old book, right? But today, we no longer raise kids. Instead, what we do is we keep them alive until they're 18, and then we send them out into the world. And we're like, oh, we can't tell them how to think, what to believe, how to act. That's not our role. They need to make up their own minds, their own morals, their own actions. Well, that's child abuse, in my opinion, because the child has no framework to make sound decisions. That was supposed to be the parent's job. But we really have gotten to this place where we don't want to raise them. We don't want to say what sort of sculpture, in a sense, do I want to create. Parents have a wonderful ability to create the adults of the next generation if they took it. But instead, we're saying, no, we can't impose our beliefs on them, and they just let them exist until they're 18, and then we wonder why these kids have no moral framework. They don't know what gender they are. They don't know what they're supposed to do in life. They don't know how to fix a flat tire because we're not raising them. So as much as we want to blame the snowflake generation for being snowflakes, and they totally are, but again, it has to come back to saying, where did this start? And it started with us. And when we started replacing the Bible with an iPad, what do you expect?
Well, yeah, and that's the deal. If you look at the number of people in prison today in the United States, we have the highest prison population in the world. And then you look at this whole thing that we're dealing with now with the opioid crisis. I mean, there are towns where, the paramedics run out of Narcan. They don't have enough. I mean, they go to one overdose and then, next call's another overdose. Now we have all that going on, but we can't have a Bible in the classroom. We can't have, like when I went to school, at a public school, in grade school, we had Bible study. I mean, yeah, your parents had to say you could go to it, and my parents were like, you are going to it. There wasn't like, if you want to go to this, you can go to it. It was like, no, you're going to it. But today we can't do that. What's happened there?
Well, again, we've got to this place where we don't want to impose our morality, at least at home. But if you really think about that, that makes no sense. If your morality and your spiritual beliefs are so bad, don't worry. The kid will figure it out and get out of it on their own. Because evidently, so did you, Mr. Parent or Mrs. Parent. So obviously, you can get out of what's bad. So don't be afraid to teach them. The other part of that is that we don't want to somehow, offend other people. Well, let me tell you something. The best time to be an atheist was 50 years ago. Because when these school shootings happen, guess what? Your kids are victims too. When these planes go down, guess what? You go down too. There's no denying that when this was a more religious society, we had less violence. We had less mass shootings. So even if you're a devout atheist watching this right now, you would be pushing for a God-based moral society and then just teaching your particular kid that you don't believe in God. And this is why, no joke, you can Google this, atheists are now sending their kids to Sunday school because at least there's a sense of morality there. Where when we're involved in secular humanism, where it's do as thou wilt, your only outcome is chaos. And we see this even in animals. We have decided not to raise our kids. We've decided that masculinity is toxic now. But when you look at dogs or bears or elephants or insects or birds, the influence of masculinity is what keeps things moving. It's what keeps them contained. There was a situation in Africa where they took the bull elephants out of a wildlife refuge. And it was just the calves and the moms. And they found that they started having dead hippopotamuses. Trees were being knocked over for no reason. The female elephants were being like headbutted and abused. And they're thinking, why? What's going on? Why are these teenage elephants running amok? They would literally just squish animals for fun. Well, then they would let the male elephants back in. And the male elephants, man, they put a stop to that. They were men. And because of that, the entire wildlife refuge then had peace again. We need to get back to this place where if I'm sitting in a restaurant, and I've done this, but if I'm sitting in a restaurant and there are teenagers in another booth that are cussing, I will go over there, put my hand on the table, and remind them that there are women present. Stop saying that. Well, most people wouldn't do that. We can't tell teenagers what to do. That's being oppressive. Well, okay, by not being oppressive, we're all dying. There comes a point where you say enough with the PC stuff. This is literally a matter of life and death. And for example, if I was a parent, before I bought my kid a Kevlar blanket and a bulletproof backpack, I would get them out of school, period. I would say, hey, you know what? Homeschooling is now free. I'll do that. It produces a better education anyway. I'll do that. It makes them more social, not less social. I'll do that. But the sad reality is we need school to kind of be the babysitter for the kids because we're too busy making money. So we're going to keep the babysitter in place and then just send our kid to school with a Kevlar blanket. Are you nuts?
You know, you're dead on, Josh. You're dead on. And I think, you know, for the adults listening to this show, which is, I'm guessing 99% of the listeners, you know, it's kind of like when you get on the airplane and they say, in case of an emergency, put your own mask on first before you help your children. You can't impart this on your kids if you don't have it yourself. You know, I don't know about you, Josh, but when I was a kid, my parents didn't care about my feelings. They wanted me to be happy, yes, and they provided a wonderful home. But if I was doing something out of line, it was never about my feelings. You know, and if the school called home, that was the dreaded of all things. Yeah. If one of my teachers called home and said, you know, hey, Mike's like goofing off in class, talking too much, or he's not, which I hated, living up to his potential, you know, if that call was made, I mean, my parents wouldn't say to the teacher, well, what are you doing wrong? It's not Mike's fault. It's your fault. No, I'd come home and I'd be disciplined in various ways. You know, when I was a teenager, one evening I drove my car through the garage right into the house. And as a result of that, for some bad behavior that I was participating in, as a result of that, my father made me, during the summer when all I wanted to do was surf, paint the entire house with a paintbrush. Everything. With a paintbrush. Now, I never drove the car through the garage again, you know, through the wall. I never repeated the behavior that caused me to get that discipline. But why is it today that we're so concerned about Johnny's feelings?
Because we have let go of logic. We have become an emotional driven people. The only thing that matters to us is how we feel about things. And one of those feelings is that somehow offending people or somehow making them mad or sad is the height of things you could do wrong. Well, it's the opposite. The Bible says, spare the rod is to spoil the child. The Bible says God disciplines the one he loves. When you are not disciplining your children, you're actually showing them, I don't love you. I would rather be your friend than your parent. And that's sick and twisted. But we have to get back then to really wanting to live this life out. And that's what it comes down to, Mike. The reality is most people don't want to be held accountable themselves, so they don't want to hold anybody else accountable. Because if they hold somebody else accountable, including their children, then they know that they're going to have to be held accountable too. And they don't want that. It's the same reason why people constantly try to twist and spin scripture. You know, oh, well, I can do whatever I want, blah, 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 because they don't want to be held accountable for the actions that they're taking.
Well, you know, you're right again, Josh. And the thing is, now we've identified the problem here. We know that it's not guns. Guns really aren't the problem. So we know that. But what is the solution? What do you really see as the short version of the solution to this problem?
Well, the short version is get your kid is out of school, start reading and studying the Bible, and start fellowshipping with like-minded people. There's a reason why other communities don't see this happening. Notice how this isn't happening at Jewish yeshuls. Notice how this isn't happening at Muslim private schools. Why? Because they're a community. We don't even know who our neighbor is. Most Christians don't know who lives 12 feet to the left of them. So when we look at this, that has to be part of it. When you have a community, you have community responsibilities. You have communities that grow and thrive together. We have to get back to that as Christianity. Instead, what we're seeing is the opposite. We have over 40,000 Christian denominations. Most people go to church for 20 minutes of worship music, 30 minutes of message, and make sure I get back home before the ball game. We're not living our beliefs. And that's us abandoning God. Well, what happens in the Bible every time God's people abandon God? What happens? They pay a price for it. And this is the price we're paying. We love to think that we're a godly nation. We're not. We're a nation that once in a while holds up a cross, and that's it. Well, guess what? So did the Romans prior to Jesus even being here. So we really have to get to this point where we do a gut check and say it has to start at home, like your analogy with the oxygen mask. You have to put it on first. Now, will armed vets in schools help? Sure, but that's not going to fix the problem.
Well, I think, arming teachers and all of that stuff is just another excuse. I mean, it's really, we don't want to take the time with Johnny. Now, I'm going to give you an example of how accurate you are about the community. We live in a very rural area in the mountains of Idaho, small town. I think there's total population of 3,000 people. Do you know that not once have I been disrespected by a group of teenagers when I go to we only have a Burger King and adults all work there. But if I go somewhere and run into a local younger person in town, they will address me by, hello, sir, things like that. We don't see it because we have a community. The high school here is very community oriented. I have a friend that lives down the way. When his kids were in high school, if they were home sick, someone else was calling him before he called the school and said, hey, do you know your boys aren't at school today? Because we all look out for one another, which is where we need to get back to, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But we don't want to get back there. Part of it is our fault. Part of it's technology too. I mean, there's no putting that back in the bottle. That genie's out. So people are addicted to YouTube and Facebook and all that sort of stuff. We're just less engaged. Whether it's NASCAR hitting a 10-year low in attendance, losing $174 million last year due to the lack of ticket sales, or it's high school proms being canceled because kids just don't care, or it's weddings not being attended because we'll all just see the updated pictures on Facebook next week. Whatever it is, we are cocooning ourselves. We're no longer engaging in a society, but that's exactly what is causing these people to do what they're doing. They feel isolated. They feel cocooned. They're not part of society. Well, part of the reason why a biblical community worked was because in the Bible, you were part of the community, and if you were doing something egregious, you got out of the camp. You were sent away. Well, that led you to want to repent in order to get back in. But today, we can't even tell people they're wrong anymore. Instead, we take this out of context, judge not lest ye be judged. And we forget about the 30 or other so passages that actually tell us to judge and judge righteously. We'll grab that one out of context. So that's where we have to get back to. We have to get back to this place where we're willing to stand up for something. There was a country song came out years ago that said, if you're not going to stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And that's what we're doing. We're falling literally for anything. Anything that comes along, we're going to gravitate towards it because we don't have our own will. We don't have our own logic and reason.
And if you think about it, let's look at what some of the leaders out there are doing. And I'm going to give you one example. It's not a political leader. The CEO of Starbucks, a woman, I think she's an African-American woman, came out and said the most dangerous animal on this planet is a white male. Now, if that's the message you're sending out, I guess that's why when we go to Starbucks, all we see is a bunch of teenagers with skinny jeans on,
and those little douche knots or whatever they call those little hair buns on men.
Yeah. And it's like this, it's this mass effort to demasculinize men, to turn men feminine. If you look, you see it all the time. And it's something we have to get away from. Now, Josh, you're going to be in Dallas here in just a couple of weeks. Give us a little bit of a hint of what you're going to bring on there.
Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about this because you're absolutely right. I mean, we're demasculating the country, but we also started by demasculating the church. Most women are complaining, where are good men in the church? Well, the churches have become Christian safe spaces. We complain about college campuses having safe spaces with puppies and cookies. Well, that's what a church has become. Nobody gets offended. Everybody recognize my gifts, you know, whatever. And the men are gone. You don't see biker men in there. You don't see cowboy men in there. You don't see men who built the country in there. You see these milquetoast guys wearing, you know, cardigans or whatever, and, you know, having their little sippy lattes. And then they wonder why there's such a divorce rate and the men aren't there. Well, because we've let go of it. Biblical men. Jesus, if he was alive today, Jesus would be a biker. So would Paul and Peter and Matthew and Luke. Like, these were bad mamma jammas. These are people going up to the authorities and calling them, you brood of vipers. These are people who are going up to people and saying, hey, Peter. Notice how he didn't say, Peter, how dare you be carrying a sword? He said, Peter, now's not the time, which means there is a time. Yeah, we have so milquetoast and feminized Jesus, it's beyond comparison. So that's where the problem lies. So we'll talk about that a little bit. But we'll also talk about why people don't believe. I'm really, really excited about my next book that's coming out, Why They Don't Believe. And we're going to look at every reason your family and friends might give you, whether it's science or God's too mean or why does God let bad things happen or, you know, which God do you believe in? Or we're going to look at all those, destroy all those arguments, and then talk about the 4 reasons people really don't believe and what you can do about it.
Wow. How exciting is that, folks? I mean, now come on, get to Dallas, get busy, you know, live stream it. If you can't, if we, you know, I think there's, like I said, there's not many tickets left. You can go online and try and get yourself a ticket. Use that code Tolley20. Activate yourself, activate your faith moving into this next year. It's time for us to take the ground back.
Yep.
We're done giving it up. Yep. Josh, I want to thank you so much for joining us. So excited about seeing you and your lovely wife, and congratulations on the fact that you know, you're soon to be a father. I mean, let's take a look at this, okay? I mean, and folks, this is what happens when you come to the Hear the Watchman conferences. The first conference that Josh came to, Josh and Brittany, I don't think at that time you guys were even really dating. Now, the second conference that you came to, you're kind of dating. The third conference that you came to, you'd gotten married.
Engaged.
And now you're coming to this conference and you've got a baby.
Yep. Yeah, each conference has been something else. You know, the dating, the courting, the engaged, you know, whatever, betrothed we call it, married, and then baby. So yeah, each conference we've done has been another stage in our life. And I cannot wait, Mike, until we get to do Hear the Watchman 49 and we get to welcome our grandchild. And it's just going to be amazing.
It will indeed, folks. So go to hearthewatchmen.com. Get busy today. Again, Josh, thanks for joining us.
Always great talking to you, Mike. I'll see you soon.
See you soon. Folks, until the next Watchman's Report, God bless each and every one of you. Remember, activate. Get up off that couch. Teach your kids. Until we see you next time here on the Watchman's Report, God bless each and every one of you.